Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of No Limits. This one is coming from the Daytona International Speedway. Obviously, we know the center of auto racing, and I am pleased to be joined by a guy I met over at Sebring Raceway, Graham Goodwin. Welcome to No Limits.
It's great to be here, and it's great to be back at Daytona. We're back last year for the first time after COVID. We've missed coming across and seeing you guys in the States, and boy, oh boy, we've got a great race meeting coming here. It's quite amazing out there.
You know, I've got to ask you this, okay? You remind me of Lou Gehrig, Cal Ripken Jr., and Gordie Howe, two endurance races, and these guys are Ironmen in their respective sports. My goodness, an Ironman defines you, Graham.
Well, maybe less so as we all get a little bit older, but you know, there were days when, yeah, I could cover a 24-hour race, whether or not it's here. We're actually one of the radio rooms of the press room at the Speedway, or the TV or radio booth, and I could do a 24-hour race. Can't do it anymore. Too old.
How old are you?
58 years old now.
Jeez, I just turned 60. Boy, you're really, I can tell where this is going to go already.
But you're right. What defines this part of the sport, this is endurance racing, and this race, the Rolex 24, is one of the world's great endurance races. No doubt about that at all. You can see that with the quality of 61 car entry we've got from here, from around the US, but also from around the world as well.
Right.
And that's what draws us in every single year. 61st running in this great race.
Folks, this guy is 58 and I am 60, and this is my first rodeo. Well, I can tell there's going to be a one live conversation here with Mr. Graham Goodwin. By the way, I should point out, Graham is the editor of Daily Sports Card, been doing it for 21 years. And you know, I often refer to somebody like you as the best kept secret in motorsports and the endurance king. So I'm tagging you a lot of different ways. So
it's what we do. I mean, what we
Right.
do is we cover just endurance motorsport, and that covers a whole range of things here in the US. It's not just the Daytona 24 Hours, it's the entire INSA package, the INSA WeatherTech Sports Car Championship, and what comes with that.
Right.
Across the world, it's the FI World Endurance Championship, which, like this championship, has got these fabulous brand new cars. We'll talk about that, I'm sure, later in the
Right.
chat. And lots of other races, dozens of series and championships all around the planet, with some really passionate men and women that love to cover sports.
Yeah, I can't wait till as we go further in this. So, folks, to give you a little bit of an introduction about Graham Goodwin, here's a guy that's covered 13 Rolex 24s, 89 24-hour races. When you told me that number, I thought I needed a hearing aid, folks, that this guy has covered 89 24-hour races. Now, give you a little bit about a background, okay? I've been called a crazy man because I can go 24 hours driving across the country, and I call myself the interstate intimidator.
Well, remember, with the 24-hour race, we'll talk about what these drivers and these teams put themselves through in a minute,
Right.
because that what we do pales into insignificance to the efforts that they put in. People don't see auto racing as an aerobic sport, but
Right.
they put them through some punishment here. The noise, the heat, the vibration,
Right.
the G-forces, particularly here on the ovals. But for a 24-hour race, if you're covering it live, it's not 24 hours. It's all the lead up to that. I mean, at Le Mans, for instance, where I do the TV for the Le Mans 24 Hours every year.
Right.
That, by the way, will be my 90th 24-hour race. Will be the centenary edition of the Le Mans 24 Hours in June. That, for us in the TV booth, is about a 36-hour day. Yeah, you're doing a full day's work before the race starts at 4, and then you've got all the wrap up, of course, and the podiums, which take forever, and interviews and such like after
Right.
that, before you de-rig the studio, and away we go. Endurance racing is about that. You'll see at the end of this race, I absolutely guarantee you, if you're down in the hot pit, you watch what's going on there. Yes, of course, we'll look to the winners.
Right.
And we've got plenty of those in the classes. But you're also looking for the teams that have made it home. And I guarantee you will see big men crying their eyes out when their car crosses that line. It is quite something to see the emotion that comes invested in this sport.
I can just imagine, and you know why I can imagine, and I'll get to this shortly, going through a couple senior races at 12, I said, you know, I had to work through that transition from 12, and now here I am, at long last getting an opportunity to do the 24. So let's talk about a bunch of things. First of all, a bit of a background. How long have you been covering racing?
So I was a fan of racing, went way back into the 1970s when I was a young kid. But professionally, I was a bit of a late adopter for a rather unusual reason. It was because I had a very different job, wasn't allowed to ply my trade as a journalist, what I trained at, but wasn't allowed to ply my trade as a journalist because I was actually a government press secretary. I worked for our government. You're not allowed to be a journalist and a government press secretary at the same time. So I came back to racing, always been a fan, but semi-professionally. In 95 as a fan, and then 2001 as a part-time writer, and I walked away from my day job 10 years ago now to do this full-time, and my full-time job now is all about endurance motorsport. It's writing about it, it's talking into a microphone about it, it's talking into a camera about it, which is where I was just before we sat down here, and it's helping drivers, teams, manufacturers and sponsors to find the deals to get them to races like this. So it's all about making this sport better.
Okay. Tell me more about Daily Sports Car, and then when you do that, you talk about a bunch of other things.
Yeah.
I want you to tie them all together, please.
Well, Daily Sports Car, we call it DSC, Daily Sports Car, started under a different name in the mid-90s with my friend and colleague Malcolm Cracknell, sadly not working in the sport anymore. He's in some not great health, and if he watches this, Malcolm, I hope you're feeling better than you have been lately. And he did it because he was passionate about this part of the sport as well, and felt that the other media that are around were not giving it the right attention. So he did it himself, and that's what we've been doing ever since. We've got guys around the world, here in the US, in Australia, across in Europe, guys in Japan, who cover all of the sport there and do it with passion and with good humour. We are trained journalists, very many of us, but we don't do it to what's called the AP style. We see this as being a very social event. It's something where we can be professional without being absolutely down the line with the journalistic style. This is a fabulous place to be for two reasons. Because of the cars and the racing, but because of the people. I'm happy to say that the vast majority of my friends in this world are in paddocks like this. And I want to enjoy the experience of this, and I want the people who we encourage to come to events like this to enjoy that and to see that that's something that's available to them too. You want to see smiling people at sports events. It's great to take it seriously. There's an element where sometimes the tribalism can get a little bit too much,
right.
And I hope sports car racing doesn't get to that stage. It isn't now. We've got out there at the moment in this brand new GTP class, Acura, Honda on pole, BMW, Porsche and Cadillac. They all look different, they all sound different, they've all got their own fans, and the fans, you've got some good-natured banter between them. Yeah, they're all enjoying the fact that you're an Acura fan, you're on pole position, you've beaten the Porsche guys, and that's a great thing. But it doesn't cross the edge. It's not like politics. We can still debate and discuss. We don't have to argue. That's what you want from something you invest your free time in, isn't it? You want to enjoy it, and that's what we do. As for the rest of it, yes, my core trade has been as a writer, but what I actually earn my living from is talking into a microphone. So
right.
I do a lot of TV and radio commentary in the past years. I've done this great race with what's now the IMSA radio team.
Right.
But I cover lots of amazing endurance races around the world for TV, for radio, and with podcasting, including the FI World Endurance Championship that includes probably the only 24-hour race in the world that is bigger than this one, which is the Le Mans 24 Hours.
Right.
And I've done that as a writer or as a radio or TV presenter, commentator for something over 20 years now. The Nürburgring 24 Hours, the Spa 24 Hours, the Dubai 24 Hours, and then a whole range of other racing where we're either sitting trackside and typing a race report, or we're talking into microphones and bringing what we can of the entertainment to people thousands of miles away.
Unbelievable.
Bringing it to life.
Yeah, so I guess what's interesting is you talked about earlier before we started this thing about daily sports car, and then you tie those other things. Do you like the idea that you can tie? Me personally, I started out as a journalist,
Yep.
and obviously as well as a broadcaster. And it's interesting how I always said if you can write well, you can talk well.
The reality is, I mean, I was trained as a journalist. That was my original training at 18 years old.
Right.
But I was then trained professionally as what I would call a communicator. I was trained to
Right.
help people to do this. But I
Right.
never did it myself. I didn't do it myself for nearly 20 years. And then someone put it in front of me, put a microphone in front of me, and I enjoy it. My happy place is with a headset on and talking about race cars and talking to people who are involved in race cars. And I think it's like any living. If you enjoy it, if you're passionate about it, then I think you can show that. I think you can show that pretty easily. I enjoy the company of people talking about things that they're enjoying and I'm enjoying. And if you can make a broadcast, a podcast, a TV program,
Right.
something that feels as if it's like a conversation you're having around a dinner table or a bar table with friends, then that can only be a very good thing, because that's what sport should be about. It should be something that really draws people together. I think sport does that in a way that nothing else in life does. You know, nothing else in life brings people together like sport or tragedy or both. And I think that's the key. A big sporting event is a powerful thing for good.
I'm going to ask you probably one of the most different questions you've ever been asked before.
Ask.
And I know you can handle it because I've known you a lot of years. Do you consider journalists celebrities?
No. I think anybody that considers themselves a celebrity has taken a wrong turn in life. I think to earn celebrity's become devalued, hasn't it? Yeah. I mean, for me, it's. You ask a lot of kids nowadays, they'll say what you want to be. They'll say famous. Famous for what? You know, what I would like in however many years it is when I walk away from this to earn a living, I'd like to be remembered as someone who's been a power for good, that's tried to make things better, that's tried to leave an impact on the sports, on this room, on other rooms around the world, that has put smiles on people's faces, that's drawn more people to what we're passionate about. I'm not interested in being famous. I like everybody else. It's nice to be recognised as doing a job well, but I'm not interested in being famous. It's almost embarrassing when, with me, you know, I've got a great face for radio, as they say. But it's with me, it tends to be, I'll be talking to a friend in the paddock, and because people have generally heard me on radio or a podcast, they don't know what I look like, and they'll hear the voice and they'll shrivel like their head like an owl, you know. And it's nice to be recognised, and people have got some lovely things to say.
Right.
But they're generally people who share the passion, and that's what it's all about. It is building a community of people to come together and enjoy this, and we're going to see tens of thousands of them here next weekend.
If I had a bottle of wine, I would probably cheers to you with that. And I'll tell you why I do that, though, Graham, all kidding aside. I've been in this business for 43 years. And I always feel like, to me, I'm as hardcore old school as you could get. And it's about digging information and being professional is what it is. And to me, there's an expectation that when we're in a position where we have a press credential, we talk to these people, this is just what we do.
A press credential is very, but there's a lot of young guys, and some older guys that, you know, come to me and say, you know, can we come and cover this race with you, blah, blah, blah. I always have one question, which is, if we get you into that race meeting, what are you going to earn by being there? What is it you're going to bring to the product, bring to the event by us investing the time and the money and the resource that these good people do here in giving you those facilities? And what you're looking for people to do is to come up with ideas to entertain, to inform. I think if people can do that, that's a talent that needs to be encouraged. And the great thing about it is, you know, this will be going out on YouTube. It's a relatively new medium.
Right.
There are some really talented young people. And too often, we've got, as older people, a bit of an attitude about the youth. All they need is guidance about the fine-tuning. The talent's there. The skill set is there. Sometimes all it needs is to get away from the position where it's about their opinion. It's not about your opinion. No one wants to know your opinion. No one wants to know my opinion. You know, it's what it's about is opening doors and peeling back what I say, the onion layers.
Right.
No sport is like is as it seems from the outside.
Right.
no business is like it seems from the outside. When you go in, you talk to people, things you assume can be very different, and this is absolutely no different. When you bring people in for the first time and you introduce them to the people who go out there and make those cars go as well as they do, and make these events tick as well as they do, they will learn something instantly, immediately. They will learn something that changes their view of everything they thought, whether or not that's motorsport, basketball, hockey, whatever it is. It's never what you think it is, and you need to go and speak to the people involved in it to find out what the truth of the matter is, and it's usually a very good thing.
You ever heard of Barry Sanders?
Name rings a bell. Not
Yeah.
great with US sports, I'm afraid.
U.S. sports.
US sports and European sports are only now beginning to get to the stage where there's crossover. American football, by the way, has got a big fan base now in the UK for the first time ever. Soccer, as you would call it, football as we call it, is the same in reverse. And so all of a sudden this kind of global media, new media, is opening people's eyes to some fantastic sports around the world. And that, with it, brings more knowledge about the background, the history, the personalities and the stories. And that means that our life is more interesting talking about some of these fantastic people and their passion.
You know why I brought Barry Sanders up?
No.
Good. I'll tell you why. I covered the Lions for many, many years, and when he scored a touchdown, all he did was give the football to the official and always said, "Don't look like it's your last time. You're going to get another one."
Yeah.
And all I'm saying is he didn't do any flash and dash.
Yeah.
It was business as usual. But in today's life, everybody's looking at flash and dash, and this is where you and I really connect heavily.
I think
because the journalists, well, we don't care. We know there's an expectation how we do things. We've been doing it so long; it's second nature to us.
I'm not special, okay? I've been very lucky in my life. I come from a very ordinary background. I'm one of 7 kids. My dad worked hard until the day he died.
Right.
And for me, I'm incredibly privileged that I can earn a living flying halfway across the world to come to an event like this and go away with more money in my pocket than I came. And for me, this is a long week. We've been here for 4 days now. We're here until the race is done on Sunday of next week, and I fly home on the Monday. There will be times there where I'm walking around this paddock with not a lot that I have to do immediately. And if there's somebody there that either has got a question or recognises me from something I've done and would like a bit of time, they're going to get that time.
Right.
Why? Because that's what it's about. It should be about encouraging people to be better informed, to enjoy their passion, their pastime more. And 100%, particularly if it's kids. If it's kids, I think one of the great thing about this weekend, this Royal for the Rolex 24 test is, in part because we've got the Girl Scouts and the Scouts camping here, a lot of those families have been around the paddock and pit lane and pits. It's great to see so many mums and dads with young kids absolutely loving their time here, and a good proportion of those kids will want to come back because it's cool.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
you see some of these cars; they're wild. They'll never have heard or seen anything as fast or as loud as these things.
Yeah.
And you know, from years gone by, these are quiet compared to what they used to be.
Oh yeah.
But you know, you're looking to give your family, your children, experiences and open their eyes to possibilities that there's nobody out there performing at anything other than a world-class level. And if that's what you're looking for, whether or not it's that you want to be a driver, whether or not it's you want to be a mechanic, an engineer, there's people there that will give time to talk to you. And the best part of it, and I say this, as I say, one of 7 children, 5 of them were girls, okay? I have a daughter, she's 19 years old, and is wondering what she wants to do in life.
Yeah.
You'll see more women we've ever had in the sport before, including, I think, 6 or 7 of the drivers, 1 car, Lamborghini, completely female crewed this year. And that for me is another part of it, is it's not about just the boys dreaming. It's about what the girls want to do with their life as well.
Wow.
And that, what used to be a bit of tokenism, it's not that anymore. In the World Endurance Championship, there is not one garage, not one, that doesn't have girls actually working in that garage. And it's not like it used to be. That girl is not just writing the press release or making the coffee. She is the race engineer, the data engineer, the person lugging the tyres around, doing hard physical work, as well as potentially the team manager and or the driver. That's why. this is breaking boundaries. As much as the technology is fantastic, and we can talk about the hybrid cars we've got here now for the very first time in this championship, it's breaking boundaries because that's a real reflection of what society's now like. We've got, more women in amongst the men. We've got more people with faces that are something other than white, which is great as well.
Right.
And we've got young people who are less afraid now to go knock on the door at their local team and ask for a chance. And that's what I think events like this can do. It gets people to dream.
All right, before we transition over to Sebring, do you ever have an opportunity to go out there and check out Daytona Beach, the beach itself, and do a little bit of touring around there?
A little bit. We don't get terribly much time. We've got 2 or 3 days where we've got nothing at track here, but we've got meetings for a couple of those days. But we're staying in a Airbnb down on South Atlantic Avenue, and we can see the damage that's been done down there. Our hosts were very clear about what had happened to their development, but you can see the hurricane took away their entire terrace and pool, and the beach is badly damaged. It will come back, I'm absolutely certain, but it's a beautiful part of the world. I've been here with my family on holiday. I've got good friends up in Orland Beach that used to be part of Daily Sports Car, and he's a local building contractor, so he's been telling me all about the challenges we've had with hurricane. But no, Florida. The flight I come in on every year from London Gatwick Airport to Orlando is known by everybody as the Disney Express, and with good reason. But it's the great thing about it is you've got a lot of people in this paddock that are asking. They've got those 2 or 3 days. They don't want to come back to the track for those 2 or 3 days. What can I do? It's people looking at doing more than just a theme park. So we've been talking to them about getting out to the countryside, going out to the wetlands, going on fishing, and going to some of the other great sports you can do in this part of the States. And compared to what it's like back in London at the moment, trust me, it might be windy at the moment, but it's a hell of a lot warmer than where we are at home. I've a Wi-Fi adore, 2 children I adore, both of them are pretty much grown up now, and a dog I adore. Right. He's a husky. And he's enjoying the weather at the moment back out. I can just say that. 6 below when I left. So, so being here is much nicer.
Well, listen, I went to Wisconsin during the holidays, so there was no tropical weather up there either.
Oh, no, indeed.
When I turned 60, it was, actually I had a decent day, and my birthday was leading up to it. It's 0 degrees, it wasn't good. So, all right, so let's segue over to Sebring, okay? How do you like covering the 12 hours of Sebring?
Love it. Well, of course, we've now got 2 races at Sebring, with the WEC race on the Friday, the 1,000 miles of Sebring, which I'll do the TV for, and then you've got America's second great endurance race, the Sebring 12 hours, which will, as always, spring break again, and it'll be in another 6-figure crowd with people. There'll be a fair number of those crowd that will not even be aware there's a race on, but it'll be 2 grids of international sports cars. This grid, most of them, will be there for the 12 hours of Sebring. Then we'll bring our guys over, and we've got better part of 40 cars to come to play. And you've seen the brand new cars we've got ahead of the field here. Right. We've got some of those, and then more besides. And there are some amazing machines that have not been seen in the United States yet. We've got Peugeot coming, not a brand you have anymore in America, and they're amazing race car with no rear wing. All the downforce created by underneath the car. We've got Ferrari in the top class for the first time in half a century in the top class of international sports car racing with a factory team. We've got Porsche, we've got Cadillac, we've got Toyota. We've got a little US team, Jim Glickenhaus, up from New York, and his self-designed and built hypercar that finished on the podium at Le Mans and is looking to take the fight to those big names. All of that will be with an 8-hour race on the Friday, and then we get to go to dinner, have a bit of a sleep, and come back and do it all again on the Saturday for the 12 hours of Sebring, like I say, America's other great endurance race. The great thing about Sebring, it is only 12 hours, but trust me, those 12 hours around Sebring International Raceway are tougher than 24 hours here. It is a punishing place to have a race car.
That's what I've heard.
The broken concrete that's still there from the Second World War. It's a Hendricksfield, a place with amazing history, with the 8th Air Force that went into battle from my home country in the Second World War. Very many of those brave young men were trained at Sebring, and we don't forget that. I remember being there for the 50th and fine gentleman by the name of Kevin Jeanette. His son is in this race.
Wow.
Gunnar Jeanette. And Kevin arranged for B-17 to come along as part of the celebrations of the 50th
Right.
to remember that, and we went up in that Flying Fortress. Sadly, that plane was lost in an accident a couple of years ago, but you feel history in those places. This is a special place. That is a special place. There are very few of those left in the world where it's relatively unspoiled, and you don't have to scrape very hard at Sebring to see the real history there, and that's fabulous.
Well, I heard that they had recently added a 24-hour race, I think.
They did.
They
That was, unfortunately, that was lost this year because of coming out of COVID.
Right.
Shipping logistics is extremely difficult, so they've brought that race back to Europe. But I think they'll be back. They enjoyed it, but getting freight, getting cars and material around the world at the moment there's far fewer choices, and it's far more expensive. So I think that they have had the 24 Hours of Sebring, I'm sure will return. The teams loved coming to do it. It was, for the most part, teams from outside the US that came, because that's what you like, is to experience something different.
Right.
But I think there will be eventually that race back. But make no mistake about it. I mean, it's at times when you're on the doorstep of a place like this, it can seem like this is normal. This is not a normal place.
Right.
Anybody from outside of the US that sees this place, most people in the US that see it for the first time, this is a theatre of motorsport. And Sebring, whilst it's very different, it's not got the high banks and it's not got the huge grandstands. It's got the history. It's got the history that go back to the 1960s. Some amazing races that happened there. It is one of those places in the world, albeit the middle of nowhere, really, at Sebring, that, trust me, tens of thousands of people from around the world dream of coming to that race.
Well, let me tell you this. I know when I was the last time I was there, Jimmy Johnson was racing.
Yeah, he was. Yeah.
And this guy got humbled when he
yeah.
went to Sebring compared to what he's used to doing in NASCAR and IndyCar. I mean, let's face it, you can race this endurance racing over at Sebring and Daytona. I'm going to get to you in a moment about the comparisons between Daytona as well as Sebring. But talking about Jimmy Johnson, here's a guy that's won a lot of NASCAR championships. He goes to Sebring. What a different animal.
Well, here's the thing. Jimmy's one of those absolute heroes from a different form of motorsport that's got a sense of history, and he's got a sense of importance. And what we're getting back to, oddly enough, in this part of the 21st century, is where we used to be in the 50s and 60s, where these great drivers would get out of one car and get into a completely different car for another race on the car. People like Jimmy Clark from Formula One in the 60s, one of my great heroes, would get out of his Formula One car, drive a Formula Two car, and then get out of that and drive a Lotus Cortina in 3 or 4 races on the same card. We're getting back to that. Jimmy's a great example of it. At the end of his NASCAR career, looking for other challenges, whether it's IndyCar, whether it's sports cars. There's another great name in international motorsport that's coming into sports car racing. At the moment, he's out there in a GT car, but he's clearly looking to get into the cars in the top end of these races, and that's a guy by the name of Valentino Rossi. Absolute motorcycle racing legend, an all-time great. He's finished his MotoGP career. He's now driving a BMW GT3 car in Europe and beyond. He raced in Dubai and finished on the podium, and he's looking for a route to try to come and win these great races. This is an all-star race. Okay, make no mistake about it. We're running a story on Monday for Daily Sports Car, where I've gone through the entire 61 car grid here with all the 3 and 4 driver squads we've got to look at what these people have achieved. There is barely anything, with the exception of a Formula One World Championship, that is not covered off in the world of motorsport. For instance, you've got Austin Cindric here, looking to be the first man in history to win the Daytona 500 and the Rolex 24 at Daytona in the same 12 months.
No kidding.
So they've never been done before. You've got several people who've been in or are still in Formula One. You've got 55 drivers on this grid that have won a class here at this race. 55 of them. And when you look at these champions, whether it's national, international, continental champions, big race winners, Spa 24 Hours, the Le Mans 24 Hours, the Nürburgring 24 Hours, championships all around the world. Of the 61 cars here, there are 55 that have got at least one driver that has won a significant championship.
Oh, wow.
And of the 6 that don't, 4 of them have got drivers that finish second. There is not one dud car in a 61 car field. So, that's where we get to. You've got on the one end the truly epic international talents, and at the other end you've got the dreamers, and they're fascinating people as well. They've got some great stories to tell, and these are guys and girls that have got talent and they've got the money to be putting themselves in a car with some amazing drivers. We had a little earlier, a guy called John Ferrano had an unfortunate accident in qualifying earlier. Canadian businessman, this is his passion. He's built a team around him with 2 of the IndyCar drivers and a young lad that's going to be in what used to be Indy Lights, along with him to try and win this race for the very first time. He'll be going to Le Mans this year. He's going to Le Mans because he won his championship at IMSA last year. It's about that sense of achievement and sharing that experience with people. That's what I love. I love the people. The people are awesome in this sport.
All right, so compare and contrast the 24-hour Rolex race versus a 12-hour Sebring race. I know we've talked about it. Now you have a chance to compare them.
They are. It's not a dissimilar field. Okay, there will be marginally fewer cars at Sebring. There will be a slightly different mix. There will be fewer drivers because there will be 3 drivers per car rather than 4 for the 12 hours. It is physically more punishing. It may only go on for 12 hours, but it's physically more punishing. This track, clearly the NASCAR oval, smooth as a billiard table. Okay, relatively speaking. A couple of places here where the cars and the drivers take some punishment. If you see some of the helmet cams when they're going over the rumble strips, they're going to feel that. And it's physically quite hard because you're going for that 24 hours. But nothing compares to the workout you get over the bumps at Sebring. Nothing at all. There's nothing in the world of motorsport tougher as a surface than that. When you'll see the cars go into the final turn at Sebring, and there's broken concrete there that was probably broken by a bomber back in World War II, and they've never fixed it. The wheel dips in and the suspension bottoms out, and it must be like falling out of a second story window. It's that bang, and you're doing that every lap for hour after hour after hour. And then you consider this. It's not about being fast on one lap. It's about being fast on every lap. And it's about being fast on every lap, whether or not it's sunshine or it's in darkness, whether or not it rains, and whether or not the traffic gets in the way, because that's the special thing about this form of racing compared to what Jimmy Johnson had in NASCAR, what Max Verstappen and Lewis Hamilton have in Formula One. The only traffic they're ever going to get is another car that's built to the same rules as their car. Here, we've got 5 different classes of car. They're the same again at Sebring. It's 5 races on the same track at the very same time. To give you a NASCAR comparison to that, that's like having the Cup cars out with the Infinity cars, out with the Craftsman trucks, and out with 2 other classes at the same time. That would be one hell of a race, because that's where you find out who's good. You've got to not lose time whilst getting safely past those other guys, because they're in their own race. They don't have to pull over and let you by. Their instruction is they've got to get past you safely. Okay, unless someone's flagging them for whatever reason to get out of the way, their job is to keep themselves safe and to have their own race. That's what makes this absolutely spectacular. After the first 2 or 3 laps, there will not be one moment in this race where someone is not overtaking somebody else.
So you're saying one word describes it: grueling.
Grueling and exciting. If you look at the trouble that is taken, NASCAR's a great example, Formula One's a great example, where they try to get the performance to the point where overtaking is possible. It's not just drafting, it's not just bumping, that you've got to have an opportunity to make sure that the cars can pass each other, that aerodynamics don't take over. With this form of racing, you're always overtaking somebody because they're in a different race. So, it may well be that we see a car that's not in the top class run pretty high up. That will only come if the 9 top cars we've got here come into some trouble. And that's quite possible. These are very new, they're very different, and it's the very first time any of these teams have dealt with hybrid technology. These are coming on for 700 horsepower cars with a blend of an engine that delivers 680 horsepower
Right.
and an electrical hybrid system that delivers 60 or 70 brake horsepower, but when the electric's pushing, the engine throttles back, so you never get more than 680. It's always 680. So what does the electric do? It gives you traction and it gives you a range extender.
Wow.
So you can be clever in this racing. You can push the envelope. If you can get the guys that are clever in terms of the way they use that tech, their car will go further on a tank of gas.
All right, a lot of people are going to want to know this one. Okay, you ready? What are your favorite races to cover? They're going to be your favorite track. And I'll make it a three-part. You ever been to Indianapolis Motor Speedway?
And I haven't. I was invited to go for the centenary race there and couldn't because I was covering another race. But IMSA is going there this year for the first time.
Oh, yeah?
So they're going to have one of their sprint races and their support package that will race on the Friday next week, the Michelin Pilot Challenge. They're going to have a 4-hour race into darkness at Indianapolis. But I think it's highly likely that in the future we'll get an endurance race for both IMSA and the World Endurance Championship
Right.
at Indianapolis on the same bill. I think that may replace Sebring.
Really? Wow, there's some
For the World Championship, that is.
Okay.
I think there's no way the Sebring 12 hours will always be. It is one of the top 3-4 endurance races in the world, as is this race. It is a quite staggering thing that the two first races of the season, big races of the season, are both in the state of Florida.
Yeah, but Sebring prides itself being in March anyways. They don't care.
They're not going to move that. No, I'm quite right too.
Right. Well, Ken Breslauer told me he didn't really like the fact that it decided the championship, that he preferred that it was in March. So I don't think that'll ever change. But going back to what we talked about, give me your favorite race that you like to cover.
It's a strange thing, isn't it? With anything you're passionate about, you both love and hate it at the same time.
Right, right.
Le Mans is an amazing experience. Le Mans is nowadays 10 days in the same place with what I like to say 150,000 close friends. This year will be closer to 250,000 people on site there for the centenary race.
Wow.
I view it genuinely as it's a real buzz to be involved in it. It's a real buzz to be trusted, to be one of the very few people that talks into a microphone to an audience of billions that listens and watches that. I've seen that as being one of the things I'm most privileged to do. Is it my favourite race? No.
Okay.
My favourite race is probably it's a track down in Australia called Bathurst. So Bathurst is a public road, goes up a mountain called Mount Panorama, 3 hours out of Sydney in Australia, and the week after this race is Bathurst, and they have their 12-hour race. Wow. So oddly enough, we're in the middle at the moment of everyone else's off season. NASCAR's off season, IndyCar's off season, Formula One's off season is our busy time.
Yeah.
So what have we got? We've got last weekend was a 24-hour race in Dubai. This weekend is this test and a 6-hour race in Abu Dhabi. Next weekend is the Rolex 24 hours at Daytona. The weekend after that is the 12 hours at Bathurst. The weekend after that, I'll be in the United Arab Emirates to do 2 4-hour races, the first 2 races of the Asian Le Mans series, where people can qualify for Le Mans. The weekend after that, we'll move to the other part of the UAE, into Abu Dhabi, and we'll do 2 more 4-hour races live. And the weekend after that, we've got a 9-hour race in South Africa in Kyalami. 7 consecutive weekends, all with significant international events.
Oh, really?
And we're not even started the European season yet. So what do I love the Bathurst race is incredibly authentic. It's probably the closest race in spirit to the Sebring 12 hours.
Yeah.
Of the big races, certainly in the US, my favourite would be Sebring.
Okay.
I do love this place, the drama here, but Sebring is something completely different. There's a different mindset and attitude about it. But we're so lucky to have great races in some amazing places. Daytona, Sebring, Bathurst, Le Mans, Spa-Francorchamps in Belgium, where the track goes up and down and through the forests that will be familiar to anybody of a certain age. That's where the Battle of the Bulge was fought in the Second World War. The Nürburgring 24 hours, which is an astonishing track. There are 3 villages inside that track. It is absolutely enormous. A quick lap there is 10 minutes, okay? 173 turns. the most dangerous track on the planet. There is no doubt whatsoever about that. And we go and race there for 24 hours. It's like a 24-hour police chase. And as we've often said on the broadcast, don't tell your friends, because if they find out, they're going to ban it. It's an amazing thing. I would say I'm lucky because of the truly great motorsport events on the planet. Not all of them are endurance races, but a very high proportion of them are. The Daytona 500 is amazing. The Indianapolis 500 is amazing. The Monaco Grand Prix is amazing, but they're not my passion. My passion is with these guys, these teams, these cars, and sending it for 4 hours, 6 hours, 8 hours, 12 hours, 24 hours to see who comes out the other end. That's endurance racing.
So give me a favorite track.
It has to be the Nürburgring. And unless you've actually experienced the Nürburgring, it's difficult to explain
Okay.
how challenging. I can only say this: you can drive your own car on the Nürburgring. It is a public road. It's a
Okay.
toll road.
All right.
You can't insure your car to go on the Nürburgring. Okay.
Really?
And I've never driven on the Nürburgring or been driven on the Nürburgring without having seen someone who's had quite a big accident. It is the most difficult track. It is narrow. It is twisty. It has blind turns. It has rises. It has weather. You know, we've had rainstorms at one corner and bright sunshine at the next corner and fog at the corner after that. We've had ice storms during the 24-hour race where the cars literally couldn't get up the hill because it's coated in ice in the middle of June. It's the most extraordinary place, and it throws literally anything and everything at you all the time. So to follow it as a journalist is challenging because you can't see the action, you can't hear the action because it's probably 10 miles away, and then they'll come back around to you again. Something like 200 cars start that race.
Wow.
There's so big a grid, they have to start it in 3 separate grids of 2-minute intervals. To call it for TV is the most bonkers thing you'll ever do. And you literally just have to choose, this is what we're going to talk about, because there's another 150 cars we're just not going to get to. I'm more than once with our TV booth, watching the TV monitors and with a view out of the track, you'll get 18, 19, 24 hours into that race, and a car will cross the line you've not seen before at any point in the previous day and a half.
Really?
It's an amazing thing. But it's stories, it's drama, it's technology, it's people, it's teamwork. It's really life-affirming stuff with the undercurrent that this is still dangerous. And actually, ultimately, you don't want to see anybody hurt. And I've been remarkably lucky in the 20 plus years that I've been covering motorsport that we don't have the awfulness that used to be motorsport in the 1960s anymore. But there's no doubt at all that part of the appeal is it's on the edge. You're on the edge all the time. If you're really, really pushing this, you're on the edge. We had qualifying earlier, 3 pretty big shunts. Why? Because the wind changed direction. And the guys were arriving at one particular corner quicker than they expected to. And by the time they got to the point they'd identified for braking, they've not realised they're going 10 miles an hour quicker than they otherwise thought they would, because there's a 20 mile an hour push behind them. It's things like that, and there's not a lot of time to adapt to that. It's stories, it's drama, it is the fact, and we say it all the time, literally anything can and probably will happen in racing like this. We've had a car knocked out of this race years ago. Why? Because it hit a possum on the banking. It ended up with the animal dead, obviously, inside the front end of the Porsche. We've had cars hit kangaroos. We've had helicopters crash. We've had drones crash. We've had all sorts of we've had lightning strikes. You know, you've always got to be aware of what might happen. We've had cars break down twice in the last 6 years on the last lap at Le Mans while leading the race after 24 hours. The leading car overall, at the start of its final lap, a 50-cent piece broke, and they lost that race.
Wow.
And was it 3-4 years ago, a very similar thing where just a tiny little connector broke. This car had dominated for 24 hours and it couldn't make the last 3 minutes. That's what you look for, is the absolute drama and the way that people respond to it.
All right, folks, this is No Limits. My name is Scott Morgan. We're pleased to be joined by Graham Goodwin. And you know, Graham is just so much fun to have. We got a few more questions to get to, but I just want to let everybody know that No Limits is our show that we like to do the one-on-one interviews and make sure that there's that real connection between myself and my guests. And you know, like I said, you know, I've known you a while. It's always been a lot of fun. And the one thing you're never short of is candor. Now we're finding a lot of frequent flyer miles to go with it.
Oh, it's just a few.
Oh, that's all. So what's it like to cover a Rolex 24 since you've covered 13 of them, especially knowing it's one of the more prestigious tracks here at the Daytona International Speedway?
It's tiring. You've got to find a time where at some point you've got to sleep. I'll have one of my guys from the States will join me on Wednesday to help me cover the race weekend. I've been here with a couple of photographers covering the race so far. So you've got to look after your energy levels. You really do have to look after your energy levels. Access here is pretty good, although the garages at Daytona are much smaller than we're used to in Europe.
Right.
So the drivers don't hang around the garages. So if you're looking to find drivers, you need to know where they're going to be. You probably need their phone number to see if you can get them to come to you rather than the other way around. But the good thing about this race and about most of the races is they want to talk to you. They do want to talk to you. They want to talk to you about what's going on for them. They want to explain what's gone right, and they want to explain sometimes what's gone wrong. So what's it like here? They look after us very well. It's a great media centre here. You've been in the room out there. It's large. It will be absolutely packed next weekend, no doubt. This is an internationally significant change here with new cars this year. So the European journalists are starting to arrive now. My French friends just sitting behind me in there arrived today. We'll have guys from Germany, Spain, Italy. The Italians are already here, by the way. And from across the United States, no doubt about that. Is it an easy race to cover? No. It's not an easy race to cover because the challenges are finding the right people to speak to at the right time.
Right.
From a TV point of view, I've done TV here for several years, not this year, but several years. The view we get from the booth, which is up in the tower,
Right.
is one of the best in the world. You can see 80% of the track from where we are, way up in the tower. There's just a couple of corners you don't get a clear view of. And we have, in our sport, an infamous assistant with that, who is the guy that every year that I've been here has done the overnight TV. He stands on top of the tower. His name is Ray Wenzel Jr. He is known worldwide to the TV viewing audience as Rooftop Ray, and that man is a genius. He can pick out, in darkness, in a closed-top car, which of the four drivers is at the wheel, because he can focus and follow with his TV camera, even at night, through the side window. We can see the colour of the helmet. He's amazing, and it's a pleasure to operate when you've got that level of professionalism, that view, professionals down in pit lane, and that you watch night come and day return. And trust me, sunrise at Daytona from that TV booth is one of the all-time great professional experiences.
So I get the feeling you really enjoyed covering the Rolex 24.
Love it. I love it. I mean, would I say this is one of my favourite races? No. It's up there in the top 10, but it's not in the top 3 because it's hard.
Right.
But in terms of the experience of doing it, it's another one of those where you've always got to remember it's an enormous privilege to be allowed to do that professionally, and for them to trust you to bring every twist and turn to an audience around the world.
All right, well, I got to tell you, I'm amazed that you've covered 89 of these 24 races, soon to be 90. What's your routine, and do you sleep, or how do you occupy your time?
So I do sleep nowadays, or try to. Here, we will bring in an airbed. We'll have that in one of these radio rooms, and the guys it's my team, so I will basically say, here's your 3-4 hours that you've got to sleep. And if you can't sleep, you can't sleep. Sometimes the guys will prefer to go and sleep in the car.
Right.
On the odd occasion, if we've got a place very close by, they may even choose to go for a couple of hours in a hotel bed, but not usually. So we do try to sleep. At Le Mans, for TV, we actually have a little RV. So the maximum time I'll get off at Le Mans is about 4 hours. It's usually about 4 a.m. So most you're going to get is about 2.5-3 hours sleep, because you're going to be back on air You can't come in going, you need to get up, get some coffee, get the
Yeah.
blood flowing. So a couple of hours will normally get you through, but trust me, there is no sleep like the sleep after a 24-hour race. It's closer to coma than it is to sleep, and sleep comes easily and stays for a long time. But yes, we do. You've got to be kind of careful about how you manage your fluid intakes. Not too much coffee. I wouldn't. You see me. It's not the right sort of food, but you need to eat little and often rather than stuff yourself. That's not a good thing because you're going to tire yourself out. And also, do the other thing that makes sense for two reasons. Get out there. There's no point. There's nothing in this room that I couldn't have at home. I can have a TV screen, I can have a timing screen. Make the difference by being here. Get out there and talk to people. Get down pit road. Get into the paddock. If there's a car behind the wall, go and find out what's going on. Take a picture. Talk to somebody. Find out what the ins and outs are and take that story back and tell that story. So it's about keeping active. The enemy is tiredness. Tiredness comes when you stop. It generally won't come if you're there and keeping yourself active all the time.
Are there other ways that you occupy your time other than the things that you've told me about?
I talk to people all the time on social media.
Okay.
Whether or not that's Twitter, whether there's what's now called Discord channels, I talk to people all the time, sharing the passion. Sometimes they will tell me things I don't know. Sometimes I'll be helping them to understand because you've got thousands of people around the world watching this race with what's not completely comprehensive coverage. They're hungry for more information. So you'll have that conversation, and that's a transaction thing. It's like, you go to a bar with friends, and they'll know things that you don't know, and you'll know things that they don't know. That's called a conversation, okay? And that's what we have. Why? Because I love it. It's not because I have to. I don't have to. I love doing it because it's helping people with a passion to get more from what I'm passionate about. And so I do that for a couple of reasons. Information, and it keeps me active.
All right, so tell me, what do you like about covering IMSA?
The IMSA organisation are awesome. They make us very, very welcome. I'm happy to say that I number a number of their senior people as friends. John Doonan, who is the IMSA president, used to look after the Mazda team that came and won here just a few years ago. I've known John for a long time, and he could not be a more welcoming presence in a world-class venue like this. Makes it his business to make the teams that are visiting from Europe and beyond welcome. There's no welcome like an IMSA welcome in international sports car racing, and that applies to we from the travelling media. He will be in here during race week multiple times. He will come and talk to us multiple times. He's interested in what's going well, he's interested in what's going badly, and he's interested in fixing what's gone badly so it doesn't happen again the next year. They look after us in terms of catering to our needs. There's hot coffee, that's another good one. And they'll bring interesting people in. You mentioned Jimmy Johnson. Jimmy would come in and talk to us. Fernando Alonso from Formula One will come in and talk to us. In very many places there's a bit of an industry in making sure you don't get to speak to those people. Here it's the opposite. They want you to have the opportunity to ask those questions. So you're not behind rows and rows of security. I have a friend and colleague in Formula One. He's covered Formula One for 8, 9, 10 years. There are 20 drivers in Formula One. There are only a few of those drivers have won championships. One of them is a man called Lewis Hamilton. He's won multiple championships. He's British. My friend is British. And the question to him was, how many times have you interviewed Lewis in the decade you've been covering it? And the answer is 3. That's ludicrous. That's nonsense. Why would that be the case? Why wouldn't there be more availability to people who are attending those races? It isn't like that here. The media are a welcome presence and are a positive presence and are viewed as such. The teams, the drivers, the engineers, the team owners, the people representing these big brands are encouraged to invest their time and talk to us. And that makes covering it in depth significantly more easy, and it makes the relationships better. You're not adversarial. You're not, they're not terrified that we're going to ask them a question. They know we're going to ask them a question, so get ready for the question. There's 2 ways of dealing with that, aren't there? Don't put yourself in a position where you've got to answer a question, or have an answer ready for what the question is when it comes. I think I'd always choose the latter. It's the opposite of politics nowadays, let's put it that way. Politicians nowadays around the world, there is an industry of not answering the question. Here, it isn't like that. Okay, they'll get some respect. There may be things they can't tell us or don't want to tell us, but generally speaking, if we ask a straight question, we're going to read a straight answer.
No conversation would be complete unless I asked you this question. I'm from the Motor City. I know that IMSA's raced in the Detroit area. How important is the Motor City to the IMSA brand, knowing that the IMSA brand, what I like about IMSA is the fact they have so many different cars competing against so many different on different levels. But let's talk about the Detroit side a little bit.
Well, Detroit's a difficult one. It's been a race that's been important, particularly for General Motors, because obviously we've had Chevrolet, we've now got Cadillac and Chevrolet. Cadillac with their new GTP car. I think they'll be looking to win the big races and win the big championships. Corvettes in a bit of transition at the moment, but still a very important part of it. Detroit, they'll race Detroit, no doubt at all. They'll race in Detroit, but that's a race I think we're going to see some evolution for. The Belle Isle circuit, I think we're done with now. I think the idea was there was going to be a street race in Detroit, and I believe that will still happen, and it should. You know, history, as we've just been saying about Sebring and about Daytona, about Le Mans, etc., is important. People like races with tradition, with history. That's another one. But the place has got to reinvent itself in what is a very different environment for the automotive industry now. And the challenges that the big three have got, challenges that the big companies around the world have got, are like nothing that you or I will have experienced in our lifetime. Electrification, you know, the politics that goes with all of that, the environmental questions that are being asked of all sorts of industries, not just the automotive industries, but the industries that bring us here, shipping industries, the airline industry. You know, is it the right thing to ship cars around the world to race? You know, what can we do about that kind of stuff? So I think the answer here for the US automotive industry, Detroit in particular, is what are their answers going to be to those questions? And the future of those races, it can depend in part on what those answers are. Detroit, for the moment, is still incredibly important to General Motors, no doubt whatsoever about it. But I'll be interested in 3, 4, 5 years' time to see where we stand with the status of that city in this industry.
Well, they had the race on Belle Isle. They're moving into the streets of Detroit now. We'll see how that dynamic plays. So, do you like covering races in Detroit?
Never been.
Never, really.
I've never
this
been
is
to
one
Detroit.
place you haven't.
Well,
covered a race.
this is the thing. When you do what I do now, which is to cover championships, what defines that is you tend to go back to the same places time and time again. And the fact that my places are Japan and China and Australia and Malaysia and all around Europe, I've not covered a full season in IMSA. I tend to come to the big races. So, you know, I've been to this race many times, I've been to Sebring many times, Petit Le Mans at Road Atlanta many times, Laguna Seca several times, Watkins Glen. You know, I've done those races, but while this season is happening, about the 9, 12, 15 races across the package here, I'm on the other side of the world covering a race the same weekend. And that's the problem, is when you've got this huge growth in racing, the inevitability is that we're going to be covering multiple races in the same weekend. Last year, 2022, there was literally one weekend after March and until mid-November, there was one weekend where I wasn't covering a race in August. There was 2 or 3 weekends where I was covering 7, 8, or 9 races a weekend. You know, not with other people, but you know, some of those were smaller races and national races, some of those were bigger and international races. But it does mean, if you think about it in these terms, to come and cover an IMSA race, you've got to be on site for about 3 days.
Oh yeah.
It's a day to travel either way. That's 5 days. You've got a recovery day at the other end of it, because trust me, you feel that when you get to our age. That's 6 days. That's a week. That's a week I've got to devote to that, and it's also that costs money. So I've got to find the money to do that. So, you know, and trust me, airfares are not getting cheaper right now.
I can imagine. Well, I'm going to let you off easy. You know why? Because I'm going to ask you to give me, so any advice you want to give me as I embark on my first 24-hour race.
2 or 3 things. Get some sleep before you come for race day.
Okay.
Make sure you've been well rested, okay? Bring snacks, okay? Bring warm clothing because it gets very, very cold here.
Okay.
IMSA put together a thing called a spotter's guide. What that is it's a beautifully printed thing which gives you basically pictures of the cars with all the drivers. Read about the classes. Pick a car in every class. Follow that car. And you will not be bored for 24 hours because one of those cars will be in the mix for something. Doesn't matter why you look after that car, looking at that car. It could be a drive you like, it could be a colour you like, it could be a brand you like. Pick a GTP car, pick an LMP2 car, pick an LMP3 car, pick a GTD Pro car, and pick a GTD car. And trust me, by the time we actually get into the final hour of the Rolex 24 Hours of Daytona 2023, you'll be up and screaming for one of them.
Wow. And I've picked up along the lines of our conversation that the Monday after, I know I'm not doing any shows. I've already moved my shows on Monday to Thursday night. So I have a feeling that Monday after that 24 hours, I have a feeling I'm going to sleep a long time because of the fact that it is such a grueling thing. But something I've always wanted to do, and I'm really revved up and able to do this.
It's after a 24-hour race, you don't set an alarm, let's put it that way. And even if you do, you're going to sleep through it. So my Monday, we're out of our place on the beach by about 10 a.m. I'll be running the guys covering the race with me back to Daytona Beach Airport so he can fly back up to Connecticut where he lives.
Yeah.
I'll then be out of here and off to Orlando to find something to do for 2 or 3 hours before I head to the airport and back to London. I'll be back in London at about 7 a.m. on the Tuesday morning, and then I'll be doing what we all do. I'll be unpacking, I'll be making sure the washing gets done, because the following Tuesday I'm on a plane to the UAE and we do it all again.
I mean, all I can tell you is I'm glad I got you today, Graham, because based on what I'm probably about to deal with next weekend, it may have been hard for us to do something together.
We will see. Enjoy it. Everybody, if you're going to be watching and listening to it, this is one of the world's great endurance races, and this year looks like it's going to be a cracker. So thank you for joining us.
And I want to tell you, everybody, real quickly, please subscribe to the South Florida Tribune YouTube channel. Our website's www.southfloridatribune.com. On Twitter, you can follow us at Tribune South. And once again, you go to our website, you'll see all the different shows. So on behalf of Graham Goodwin, this is Scott Morganroth, appropriately named the Motor City Mad Mouth. Thank you for joining us on this edition of No Limits. And like I say, Graham, it's been a pleasure having you on the program. And I've just enjoyed the friendship even more, my friend. Thank you again.
Take it easy, my friend.
You bet.